So I was waiting for someone to comment and ask this question. A lot of y'all about to get mad at me. The problem is, a lot of people are taught and raised to stay within their race. A lot of people spend time dating people to satisfy their families when you should only be satisfying you. As a black woman, I can say that there's a lot of black men that come from traumatizing backgrounds. They suffer from abandonment issues, mental issues, not to say that any other race do not, but it's very, very common in the black community. Whereas there's a lot of white men and others, Asian, Puerto Rican, where they're taught certain things at a young age and they become men at a very young age, and that's why you see them getting married at a young age and they're able to buy a house. They have careers by the time they're 30 and they know what it is to live life. They know how to treat a woman because they were raised with that background. And I'm not saying anything to discredit black men. Trust me, I'm not. I love black men. But as sisters, we are tired of being the men in the relationship. We are tired of picking up the slack where some of y'all mamas should have taught y'all and y'all fathers should have been active in your lives. So a lot of us are curious about the other kind. And if that's what makes us happy and if that's what we want to do, it should be no issue, because I don't have an issue with a black man dating a white woman or an Asian woman or whoever makes him happy. The point of the matter is we want love. And sometimes you got to step out of your element to find what is really for you. You have to be open. And a lot of people are so stuck on the things that happened back in the day or the racism issue. A lot of people are so stuck on that and they hate to see others with others. I have white people in my family, so I am never opposed to dating outside of my race. I was not taught to be like that. Love doesn't have a color, and it should never have a color, because at the end of the day, we all have the same color of blood. So collectively, I can speak for most. Us black women are tired, and we want to try something new. And something new may be the best thing for us, and we won't know until we give it a try. I hope that answered your question.
Let it be clear, black people have always been the most eager and the most open to integrate into white families, into white societies. Why? Because white people hold the power. They usually hold the wealth and resources. So generally speaking, black people are more open to interracial dating or interracial engagement, because when it comes to clash or when it comes to the power dynamic, black people are below white people in the West. So I'm like, of course, black people as a collective are going to be more open. So when she's talking about, oh, a lot of us were told to stay race loyal, that's generally more white people. White people generally are taught more so to be race loyal than black folks. I'm not saying it doesn't happen across the board, but again, if you're talking about a power dynamic, if you're talking about wealth and resources and maintaining the current system, there's more incentive for white people to remain passing their wealth from class to class. That's literally what anti-miscegenation laws were about. Many of them were established and they were done based upon keeping the power and wealth in certain families. That's even why there are certain elite families that would marry cousins and distant cousins and keep it in the family, because they wanted to maintain power and control. Generally, the black community, I think, is a lot more open than we want to believe. If that wasn't the case, then the civil rights movement wouldn't have that wouldn't have been a thing. That wouldn't have been fought for, and we wouldn't have had ancestors who literally went and risked their lives and their comforts and their freedoms to get integrated into white spaces. So, I understand these talking points and I understand these ideals, but I'm like, I'm like, okay, let's try to look at this in its totality. And if the idea is that, oh, black women are so loyal because they were pressured to, not true. That's just not true. I think there may be some cultural pressure there. Sure, I don't want to completely deny that. But I think for many of us, it's more of a lack of options. I think that's really what's going on. But let me continue.
When you should only be satisfying you. As a black woman, I can say that there's a lot of black men that come from traumatizing backgrounds. They suffer from abandonment issues, mental issues, not to say that any other race do not, but it's very, very common in the Black community. Whereas...
Okay, so y'all heard that. Black men suffer from trauma, they got PTSD, they've had bad relationships, they had bad families, they had bad examples. Granted, let's just assume that's true. Black women didn't. Black women didn't. Black women, again, who grew up in the same families of these Black men, didn't see, unhealthy family dynamics, don't have PTSD, don't have trauma, don't have, traumatizing situations. Black women don't. Again, and that's what I'm saying. How is it that all of the worst aspects of our childhood, or all the trauma, or all the dysfunction somehow was inherited by Black men and completely just overlooked Black women? Like, that's not how life works. Y'all grew up in the same environment. Y'all grew up in the same household. Both of y'all were impacted. It may come out differently. It may look differently. But if we want to say that Black men are traumatized, okay, based upon that fact, you were too. If you came from the same household, really no way to get around it. And that's what I'm saying. Sometimes we can take this kind of separatist approach, and we can try, and I get it. Because there's a lot of stuff that goes on in the Black community where you're just like, I don't identify with that. I want nothing to do with that. I don't like that. Like, I get it. I absolutely get it. But there's certain things that just impact you, period. You can't get away from it. And you can try to escape it. But if you try to escape it and you don't acknowledge that it impacted you too, then you just start looking like a hypocrite. And I think that's what happens for many of us. I'm like, how do we keep on saying Black men are so dysfunctional, but then Black women aren't? That don't make no sense. We're both culpable. We're both impacted on some level. Let me continue with
as there's a lot of white men and others, Asian, Puerto Rican, where they're taught certain things at a young age and they become men at a very young age. And that's why you see them getting married at a young age and they're able to buy a house. They have careers by the time they're 30. And
okay, here's another thing, y'all. Okay, here's another thing. And I know this is too, Black men, right? Well, we'll try to compare race to race and it's like, oh, well, Black men don't do this, but white men do this, or Asian men do that. And I'm like, okay, granted, she mentioned homes. She mentioned being taught how to do this, how to maybe run businesses, how to run marriages, families, things like that. Again, if you want to try to implicate an entire people group, or if you want to try to maybe judge or measure where an entire race of men or women is at, you cannot devoid that from what actually happened or what is happening. You want to talk about, passing over homes, passing over wealth. Just not too long ago, Black people weren't even allowed to be doctors or to be lawyers or to be engineers or even have access to certain homes or to be able to own homes. The amount of towns that were in America that Black people built that were burned down are countless. So this is where, to me, when we have these conversations and we try to say Black men aren't doing this, but white men are doing that, if you can say that honestly and then overlook not only race, but history, what has happened and still is happening, then that is a completely dishonest conversation. And it's so interesting to me how these conversations there's usually all these reasons as why Black men just need to kind of pull themselves up by the bootstrap and just figure it out, forget about systematic oppression, forget about racism, forget about the man, forget about whatever, just work hard, which is like, okay, most men are willing to do that. Most men are willing to say, I don't care about racism, I don't care about none of this, I'm just going to work hard and get my money. Most men are okay with that deal. But now when it comes to women and maybe we're falling short or we're doing wrong, oh, well, racism is making me fat. Oh, well, dieting is white supremacy. Oh, well, I can't wear my natural hair because I'm discriminated against. Like, now it becomes all about racism, or all comes about all the discrimination or all these things that are impeding Black women or we can't be we can't be feminine because our men are masculine, because back in slavery. We want to talk about slavery and racism when it comes to how we aren't measuring up. But then when men aren't measuring up, it's like, oh, well, white men can do it. And that's where I think, again, these conversations are really imbalanced. They're really imbalanced. I don't really think it should be about trying to point the finger. I'm more like, okay, let's just try to have an honest assessment of what is going on. But if your assessment is, oh, men are doing it right over here, they're all wrong, I'm right, so this or this or that, which is kind of what it's actually been. At a certain point, that is very isolating. And then you're not even giving, I think at that point, you're not even giving men the benefit of the doubt. You're not even giving them a voice. And that's really what's been happening, especially when they're talking about dating and marrying out. Dating and marrying out specifically. These are the different ideas. Oh, this, that, you know, black men are traumatized, white men aren't, black men are poor, white men aren't, black men, you know. These are the different excuses that come up. But then if a black man, whether he dates or marries out, maybe even if he marries a black woman from the diaspora, whatever it may be, he's corny, he's gay, he's lame. That's it. There is no nuance. There is no, well, black women are this or black women are that. None of that. If black men do this thing, if they consider dating and marrying out, or if they consider grabbing their passports, if they consider any of these things, they are corny, gay, and lame. But for black women, oh no, it's because, you know, they treat us like queens or goddesses, or it's because these men have more resources, they're taught, they're emotionally available. We have all these excuses. And all I'm saying is, okay, if those excuses can exist for black women, why can't they exist for black men? Because y'all both grew up in the same environment. Y'all both grew up under the same system. Y'all both had the same mama, same daddies. So don't act like one of y'all was traumatized and another one isn't. If you want to sit here and say all these black women are traumatized, you yourself were too. Because that's your dad, that's your uncle, that's your brother, that's your son. But somehow you are connected. Let me continue. I'm almost done.
They know what it is to live life. They know how to treat a woman because they were raised with that background.
Okay.
And I'm not saying anything.
Again, I'm saying that too. I'm like, for all, and I think, because I see some of these women, I'm like, I'll see like, you know, black women to me that seem like, okay, that generally seem like they're not trying to hate on nobody, but it's just like they took the Kool-Aid. But I don't think it's vindictive. Like there's some black women out there who I think are legitimately like vindictive and they hate black men. And then I think there's some who are just misinformed. It's just like, sis, no, like, let's unpack that. So she don't seem like she's trying to hate on anybody. But I'm like, this is the same sisterhood rhetoric that we've all heard. And as I mentioned before, if all these white men were treating white women so good, as she described or alluded to in her video, feminism would have never happened. Never. It wouldn't have needed to have been created. So history alone disagrees with that assessment. Because feminism was all about white women being discontented with their position in society. They wanted more power, they wanted more wealth, they wanted more agency because they were not happy with their relationship with men and their relationship in that society. So again, what she's saying, it may make sense emotionally based upon the different stuff we've heard on social media, but it is ahistorical for that simple fact. Let me continue.
To discredit black men. Trust me, I'm not. I love black men. But as sisters, we are tired of being the men in the relationship. We are tired of picking up the slack where some of y'all mamas should have taught y'all and y'all fathers should have been active in your lives. So a lot of us are curious about the other kind. And if that's what makes us happy and if that's what we want to do, it should be no issue, because I don't have an issue with a black man dating a white woman or an Asian woman or whoever makes him happy.
I'll give her the benefit of the doubt. She don't have an issue with it. Okay, let's just assume that's true. But black women do. By and large, we already know that they are not happy about. Black women are not happy if they see a man date or marry out. That is just false by and large. She may personally haven't had an issue with it, but we have scores and scores of evidence and years and decades to actually show that that's actually not true. That's actually not true. And what she alluded to before also, which is like, I don't understand why the only way we can put other people on a pedestal or other races on a pedestal is if you don't know them. If you actually personally know white people, Asian people, Hispanic people, whatever, you know that they also struggle too. You have poor white people, you have lower middle class white people, they have their own struggles. It's not like everybody is you know, waking up every single day and then going to Pilates and having organic pressed fruit juice and then getting their nails done, and like, that's not real life. There are plenty of women of other races who have struggles, who have narcissistic fathers or mothers, or have abuse. I have talked to these women personally. I've been on the phone, hugged them, heard their stories. It's very closed-minded to me. It's like this sense of curiosity. It's like, okay, one, do you not understand history? Two, do you not understand that at the end of the day, people are also still people, and they struggle. Look, just even if you don't want to talk to a person, just go on Netflix. Okay, you will see countless stories of dysfunctional families, non-Black dysfunctional families. So it's like, what's even going on, people? Let me continue here.
The point of the matter is, we want love, and sometimes you got to step out of your element to find what is really for you. You have to be open. And a lot of people are so stuck on the things that happened back in the day, or the racism issue. A lot of people are so stuck on that, and they hate to see others with others. I have white people in my family, so I am never opposed to dating outside of my race. I was not taught to be like that. Love doesn't have a color, and it should never have a color, because at the end of the day, we all have the same color of blood.
I understand this. Love is love. Like, again, I get it. It's just, if you want to be realistic about the way the society is set up, it doesn't look like that. People can fall in love and have romantic power, have romantic connections, but let's not act like there is still not pressure within families, sometimes culturally, class-wise, to choose specific kinds of people. That definitely exist. Y'all know I'm reading a book about it. I'm going to bring sociologists literally to come on and talk about how people today are dating and mating and choosing partners, not based upon what they're saying, not based upon what we're seeing on television, but how they are actually moving. And I mentioned this before, race is the defining factor today, at least in the West, in America, when it comes to how people decide to settle down, who they choose. Race is the defining factor. Now we're gonna unpack why. Like I said, I'm gonna break that down in the interview and once I talk to the sociologist. But this whole love is love thing, I think it's great. And if we lived in a perfect utopian world, that would be really cute. But people internally, subconsciously or consciously, whatever, they don't always operate like that. And even if there is a person who holds that values, usually that person will have to fight against pressure of their families, pressure of whatever business, their social circle. And if they are higher up in the economic scale, if they are higher up in class, if they are higher up and maybe they have a family that has legacy, maybe they have a family that has resources, that pressure is harder. And a lot of people under that, if it's like, look, if I fall in love with somebody in my own race, or if I choose somebody in my own race, I'm going to get that house, that car, and that trust fund. Versus if I date and marry somebody out and my parents aren't coming to my wedding, I'm not getting the trust fund, I'm not getting the house, I'm not getting tuition to college. A lot of people are going to choose, I'm going with somebody in my race. You know what I mean? So it's like, we can't remove those kinds of situations from the conversation, because all of that exists. Marriage, yeah, it's love, but there are obvious political and economic components of this. And again, when you're talking about especially wanting to date and marry maybe more successful men, or men that have resources, all of those things are taken into consideration.
Black women are tired, and we want to try something new. And something new may be the best thing for us, and we won't know until we give it a try. I hope that answered your question.